I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. I'm with you now, and I'm with you to the end, but maybe in another dimension. We have a few curveballs to deal with today and a lot of information to send your way. As I look at the little screen here on the monitor, almost look like Stanton Friedman with the books in the back, but a lot of people say they like this backdrop, and it's very, very effective. So it's a good thing to be in the backup studio to communicate things to you live, stream live on this, our second last show on this series. It appears the owners-to-be are going to raise the rates, and I'm barely hanging on with my fingernails here and now, so it's just impossible for a Christian Mission News Service to hang on at that rate, regardless of how much more it is than it is. So we will work on backup plans. We have meetings scheduled, and if worse comes to worse, we'll be doing it by ourselves as a very humble operation. But the value of the media that we give out will just be as important. You see, what we do, even though we do it on a small scale, is I can take a big swimming pool and fill it with a chemical. Then I can take another swimming pool and fill it with a chemical. They can be Olympic-sized swimming pools. Mix them together, and not a whole lot happens. And then in chemistry, they have a word called a catalyst. And I can take something like a small bottle or a glass and dump it in these double swimming pools. And the next thing you know, I've got a 5,000 meter crater in the ground, because the catalyst, that small little bottle, is what got the reaction going. And what alternative media and humble little shows like this do is we act as the catalyst. The big forces can grapple and throw each other around and knock each other on the ground in a diluted state of power and control for the planet Earth. Mano a mano, the struggle of the titans. But not a whole lot happens until the catalyst, Conspiracy Cafe, and myself become involved and pour that little glass, that little bottle, into the pool. And then the world changes at cataclysmic rates. I say that that's good value for the money. I feel honestly and earnestly that we've probably stopped several attempts at World War III, several false flag terror operations, several master strokes of deceit. Maybe we were the catalyst that got the guy who wanted to push the button, Mitt Romney, and take us all to the apocalypse out of the game because we had the audacity to pour that little bottle in the mainstream swimming pool. And maybe people just got fed up about it. We are the alternative to say, well, we have to look at different ways of thinking and analyzing problems. As I keep reading in this little book, and I forgot to bring another little book a fan sent me last week, so I've got to slap myself. I need a secretary or 5 to help me load my bag when I come here. But I just read a page and a half in here again, and all our problems in the economy are solved. There's big meetings going on in Europe, big meetings going on in corporate boardrooms. And you could probably buy this book, The Crisis of the Old Order, The Age of Roosevelt by Arthur M. Schlesinger, probably for almost chump change on Amazon and in old bookstores, because nobody reads anymore, or probably even knows how to read anymore. And there we go. They lived through all these problems. And some of the greatest minds of the era had answers to the economic malaise. And it's a science, so it goes on forever. And we've broken all the rules. And they knew that, and they wrote about what rules were broken and what the answers are. One of the big problems we have is we have underconsumption. We have underconsumption because people don't earn enough to buy stuff. So what they did is they seconded that role, since the Roosevelt era was the first to get into big deficit financing for governments in the modern era. They allowed government to spend and make up the difference. And generally we've been on a relatively decent path in upward mobility. But now that governments are having a hand choking them out, they're reducing their ability to spend and create demands. So we're getting into an underproduction period again. And because the taxpayer's being hung upside down by his ankles and shaken a lot, they're the lender of last resort. they're not spending. So that's why we're seeing this just choking out and stalling at the peak. And part of it is, I guess they call it greed economics, would be a more modern word for this this philosophy. Is because people aren't doing something. There was an old saying that goes back in time called share the wealth. You see, when you share the wealth, everyone prospers. When you hog a little bit for yourself, could be 50 people in the room saying, I've got all the food and I just eat it myself and I let the other 49 starve to death. Well, we really haven't done much. Where if we planned it out well and shared it all, then maybe we could all live and prosper and get out of the room or the trap alive. Very simple processes, things you learn in kindergarten. If we learn in kindergarten. I was listening to some young parents yesterday, and another thing I should have in my kit bag to bring with me is a ball-peen hammer, hopefully a rubber one, and just whack myself in the head a few times when I hear things of this, the mass stupidity of the planet Earth. So this one chap's talking about his daughter, who's 8 years old and in public school here in Ontario in the Toronto area, and they don't teach you to write anymore. So this little thing here, a pen, which I call a weapon of mass deception, if it's used improperly, they should register all those pens, but I guess they work on the thoughts first. And then this little dewey here is a piece of paper. So the kids that are 8 years old get no instruction on how to put this onto this and work it around. They only use this, the keyboard. So they don't know how to write pen on paper. Then another father was there, and he's got a 12-year-old taking math, and they don't learn anything about doing math on paper. Everything's done with a calculator for you. So the computer does your thinking for you. You don't do anything. And then anyone who's learned what a mathematical table is and done the times tables and all that kind of stuff in earlier years and put the pen on paper and even learn grammar and things like that, realize that it's not to the point of dumbing down. You're not even on a scale of any sort. You're finished. You're done. So now maybe I don't have to feel as bad about my Member of Parliament. You see, my Member of Parliament here, the Honourable Bal Ghazal, it almost rhymes, PC party, of course, and Member of Parliament. He's also the Honourable because he's got a cabinet position. So, you know, you don't have to pay extra for that. You just get it for your services. And, you know, relatively nice guy, I imagine, never met him, but he sends out, you know, this thing on these laws they have for, you know, going after all the things that we consume or eat or have around, and, you know, and they got the great propaganda shots for the children. So, you know, right away you're getting a propaganda shot to appeal to your emotions, to show that they're great guys and all this sort of thing. And I've always marveled, because this is a set piece, I even get the same thing from other members of Parliament, and whatever, and they never leave any room on them, you see? Like, there's no place to write. And I've always wondered about that. Years ago, I used to have an MP, and there was always a box at the bottom for your comments, but then, see, nobody gets this anymore to put on this, to squiggle it around and make those letters that they have in the alphabet. And those guys in Parliament know that. So there's just like 3 little ticky boxes, and you pick who's doing the right thing. Is it the Green Party, the Conservative Party, the NDP, or the Liberals? With no room to comment. So you have no room to put any input in at all about anything about what you think about. So of course this is about, you know, these acts where they just want to have the power over all products and commerce, so that their own people who probably pay for the paper and not the pens can put the nice pictures of little babies on this thing. But there's no room to talk about what's really important. So I got to write over the baby in the bottle to say, you know, I'm more concerned about Power Corporation or the Bilderberg Group running the country than you guys, because you're just vassals, butt lickers and boot kissers. Why as well get rid of them all? You're middlemen, wasting my money. Want to save money? Abolish Parliament. Let the Bilderberg Group rule right from the top. Save a lot of time and effort. You're the boss anyway, so instead of having secret meetings, you just step into the Common House and say, I decree by the order of Henry Kissinger that the world will be like this. Straight to the point. Cut out the bullshit. I had to listen to son of Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, talk about his flip-flop on the gun registry and stuff like that, and saying how it was a big mistake. And he stuttered when he's doing it, so great orator, you know. And I apologize. And you want like he's running for prime minister. Don't expect him to take the shoe off the foot and bang it on the table like Khrushchev or something, but you know, I would. And you see, nobody knows why. Everybody just looks at it, why did that happen? You know, this was like the mantra of the lib left. This was the great stone god carved in the mountains. Nobody understands why. We know why. We know why. Because we know how to put that pen on the paper and write the alphabet. See, it's called, even you just use 3 letters. You don't have to use the whole word because you probably can't spell it all. NAU, North American Union. That's what the Bilderberg Group and Henry Kissinger and all the global elites want. And they've told the bitches, bitch slap. That's why they got rid of the gun registry, because we have to harmonize. It's the buzzword, right? It's too bad we don't have a stunt man or something like that with a harmonica in the back to harmonize. And then the barbershop quartet off in the background, you know, everybody can sing nicely, and the harmonica can go on, and then we'd probably be fit for mainstream news. Because we're going to join with the United States, and there's no way in hell that we can join the United States banning guns up here, or even registering them or anything like that. That'd almost be civil war down below the 48th parallel, let me tell you. So the global power elite just said, hey, it's got to go. End of story. I want my North American Union. Might be a harder thing to sell in Mexico. That's probably the whole reason why they did Fast and Furious, and they lost because they got caught. And then, of course, there's no room in here to talk about Fast and Furious either, or, you know, whatever. You just fill this little box. Which of the 4 parties that we picked for you do you like the best? Well, I picked none of them. Because they're all a bunch of jerks. They're all globalists. I have the conservative globalist, the NDP globalist, the liberal globalist, or the greenie globalist. I don't get any other choices, although I have to give some credit to at least the Green Party leader for taking on some issues about, you know, free trade and all this other kind of crap. But, you know, there we go. That's what I get. See, I used to have a Liberal MP a long time ago when it was sort of a free country, and even though I didn't support the Liberal Party, I liked the guy. You know, he's one of those country MPs, very decent, well-spoken. You could talk to him and all that kind of stuff. So when he sent you a whole booklet, you know, and every bill that was before the House of Commons was on that book. And it had a big page at the back for your comments, and I think you could write on both sides. Because back in those days, they had one of these and one of these, and they knew what to do with it. So the book would be kind of like this size, you know, 2 pages, and you could actually put comments in there and say what you think about various pieces of legislation, and you knew what all the legislation pieces were and what status they were at, first reading, second reading, etc., before the Senate. And you actually had input, because this guy was your representative instead of your taskmaster. So our MPs are like the guy on the galley ships in the slave days, you know, boom, 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 boom. And you just gotta, when they tell you to do that. See, you got your hat on backwards. It's the other way around. You're supposed to be the guy with the boom, 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 boom. And it's the MP who's supposed to be representing your interests on the oars going, yes, boss. So somebody put the cart before the horse. Trouble was, it's the people who got one of these and don't know what to do with it. You know? Maybe I'll make a paper airplane. But that's the way the world works. And it's a shame that's the way the world works, because the world can never change unless there's a channel to change to. And that's why I've always been a big proponent of alternative media and stood by that channel in this show for as long as I did. It's like you're the radio operator on the Olympic, which we know was not the Titanic, tapping out the SOS for as long as you can. And we'll still be tapping out the SOS wherever we can, and we'll keep you informed on where that is. But it's just a proof on a thing I wrote on quantum economics. This is the most successful show that channel's ever had. you'd have to pay somebody beaucoup to do it for you professionally. I don't get paid anything. I work for free. I pay them. It's the most successful show you got. Brings in tons of listeners and watchers or viewers, because we do TV end of it too. Some people do the podcast only. Some people watch it. But it's there. Then you got to ask yourself, if this is the best, if it was mine, I'd be saying, you got extra time? We'll give you extra time because you bring in listeners. And the more people that listen, then the easier it is for us to sell advertising. Maybe we can get somewhere. Right? You got volunteers. I don't mind. Like, I used to have a neighbor mowed my lawn, you know? Okay. He didn't have to pay for the privilege. He just did it. But if I say, well, now you got to pay for the privilege of mowing my lawn, we'd probably say, well, I'm not mowing your lawn anymore. But I'd just be happy. I say, well, gee, thank you very much. He goes, yeah, I'm just used to it. You know, he was an old guy, retired, 80-something and a half or whatever, and he just mowed my lawn. Well, you know, I didn't even know who did it for a while, because I'd be away and I'd come back, my lawn's mowed. And then one day I found him. Oh, hey, you want me to chip in with gas or something like that? Help you out? Oh, no, it just gives me something to do. Knock yourself out. What do I know? What do you know? You're going to know a few things when you're done with me tonight. There's some big, big changes coming on in the world. One of the big ones is a funny story. It's well, it's not that funny, I guess, but it's called The Code's the Thing. We have it posted on our website, conspiracy-cafe.com. So seemingly, in 1982, somebody was cleaning out his chimney and found a dead carrier pigeon inside with a little note attached to his foot. I think I got a picture of that part down here somewhere. There he is. So when I looked on the calendar last, this was 2012. So in a little thing that they put secret messages in World War I and even as late as World War II, for the carrier pigeon to carry a coded message on paper across enemy lines. This is the actual message in a relatively simple encryption code by today's standards, but in those days the state of the art. It used this little wheel here called a Turing wheel, and that was part of the German Enigma coding machine. So you'd set these dials, and then when you punched the typewriter, this would flip the message to another letter. So if you know what those settings are, when you punch A, you know it's going to come out whatever it comes out on the other end, as long as you know what the settings are. Anybody else has got to go through all the combinations of the wheel. There was a 4-wheel machine, and then they even went to a 5-wheel machine to even make it more complicated. And even the beginning computers like Colossus that were used by the British intelligence services weren't powerful enough to really take a good, sometimes it'd take weeks to months to decode or get the set for a certain day to know what those settings are. So you could send out relatively secret messages. Well, this baby didn't get home. They know it came somewhere from occupied Europe around the D-Day era. D-Day, the 6th of June, when the Allies invaded Europe. So they gave this message, and they've had it since 1982, to GCHQ, the British Code Intelligence people and Signals Intelligence people, and asked them if they could decode it. They said no. Even comes with the little serial number of the pigeon, so you know probably what the settings are just based on that. They still said no, they couldn't break it. They still have these machines, like these early computers, and the German Enigma machines in the museums and stuff at Bletchley Park. There may even be still a few people alive that know how to do this. The best explanation in the paper was, somebody said, well, because they found the pigeon in a chimney, it was a message to Santa. And that's the best they could come up with. Of course, I don't have a computer to break the encryption code. The NSA does. So do most countries' intelligence agencies. The new supercomputers can break the encryption of almost anything that's encrypted. Those old codes in 4 and 5 wheels, they could probably break that in 10, 15 minutes tops without having the slightest clue what the settings are. They even go to modern variations that could have 20 or 30 wheels, and they break it in a day or 2 or 3. That's how fast these machines work. So we use logic, you see, because when I went to school, you got one of these, the weapon of mass deception, and you got one of these, and you had to put things on it, you know. And you had to write and think and analyze data, which is going to be a lost art. So when I'm, stuffed and put in the museum as the last gun-owning straight guy who maybe smoked a cigar and sucked back a little bit of whiskey or used cash or thought freely or read a book, a real book about real topics, I'm going to be a rare thing. So with my knowledge of what I understand about history, just shortly after D-Day, of course, was the plot to kill Hitler. The July 20th plot. Very important thing, because if you kill Hitler, you got to have somebody take over. There's only one possibility at that time about who would take over. It would be Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. Now, most of our kids don't even know who our leaders were 10 or 15 years ago, so we're pretty much crap out of luck to find out if they ever knew Erwin Rommel. One of Germany's great generals, a guy who actually broke the British codes and had a one-up on them because of a American giving out intelligence in Egypt. His name was Bothersome. There's a link on the website to this guy. He was, really in deep. Really. So if you gave away secret information, cost you a lot of stuff in the war, you figure you'd be, maybe given the Bradley Manning treatment, because you're giving aid and comfort to the enemy and stuff like that. This was at war, people are getting killed and everything. But maybe at the beginning, America wasn't at war with this guy until Hollywood got geared up to go to North Africa. So Rommel's 621st Radio Intercept Company even got in the clear messages from the Brits. They were just that smart, because maybe even back then there was guys didn't know pen, paper, codes. If somebody's listening, the walls have ears, as they say. And the Germans knew a lot about what the British were going to do, and it was just, no masterstroke for Rommel to take care of business with these idiots, because they told him all their plans. But just before the Hitler plot, Rommel was attacked by aircraft. There's 3 specific groups of aircraft that are claiming responsibility for taking him out. And this is an artist's rendition of this happening. The Spitfires or whatever planes that they used coming low out of the sky and blasting him as he traveled down the highway. Target of opportunity, I'm sure they say. Or was it? Knowing history, my speculation might be that the Allies were already tapping this guy before the invasion to say, we're going to pop Hitler, and you're going to take over and surrender to us. And maybe or maybe not, we'll tell the Russians, maybe, maybe not. Who knows? It was always supposed to be a complete and total surrender on both fronts. But I would speculate that was the plan. And then something went wrong with the plan. So the Germans send the coded message, got it all printed up. This is what an Enigma machine looked like in the field. They put the message in the carrier pigeon, and he didn't make it. He died in the chimney. So you get one of those deals to say, respond by this day, or else the consequences. He responds, but they never got the message because the carrier pigeon died. And they go, see, we told you, the guy can't be trusted. He is a Nazi. He's a loyal German. Take him out. So the planes come low out of the rising sun and blow the living crap out of them. So the funny thing is one of the pilots involved in this died in I don't know if it was a mysterious car accident, but in 2008, they got him hooked up here to the link, I guess, that I put there with the car, because this picture came from a website that talked about him. So you click that link and it goes to his website. He died in 2008. The pilot was, or one of the named pilots is Fox. And then, of course, the Twilight language comes in as, Rommel's the Desert Fox. Another pilot was named Cowlf. Cowlph. And then when we look at the writings on this document, there was something in there for, I wrote it down, Cowell. The 30-year-old story about this event was written. That's it. The author was named Cowell. It wasn't on the original document, but the story written about the story has a very similar name to one of the pilots that greased him, and he got shot at a place with Montgomery in the name. St. Foy de Montgomery. Montgomery was a senior general of the British forces under Eisenhower. Classic stuff with twilight language, just a general idea of how the world works with codes and secrets. So even though we can't break the encryption, we wonder, because those are the two main events at the time, what else are you going to write about? You know? Von Rundstedt had a pizza. Mussolini farted. What else? What's important at the time? These were the two most important things: the July 20 plot against Hitler, which failed ultimately, and the near execution of Erwin Rommel. After he was recovering from his wounds, he was just given the honorable way out. Poison or pistol? Good night. Kill yourself, or, you know, we put your family through what happened. And Hitler was just ruthless with what he did to these plotters. They were tortured in ways that, you know, would make the most derelict torturers blush. Then another code story comes out. The Mona Lisa's eyes hide a secret code. So hidden in her eyes are hidden letters. Da Vinci signed his work there. So in the eye, you see LV. There's symbols in the left pupil. Letter C, E, or simply B. Other symbols are hidden in the landscape, the arch of the bridge, possibly a number 72 or an L2. One of the big things that art has always been used for is to code messages. Baden-Powell, the founder of the Boy Scout movement, used to gather intelligence, and he drew pictures. We did this on a show a few years back, or a couple of years back, however long it's been, to show his sketches. So when he traveled somewhere, he would draw these, you know, amazing sketches of scenery and nature, and concealed within would be the plans and layouts of military installations in the country he was visiting in. See, if you walk around with a big sign that says spy, you usually end up getting busted or tortured. So now I can see why the military is so keen to capture art. I always wondered that. Why do they loot the art? Well, the art could be a story. And that might be one of the main reasons they take it, to gather intelligence. This was another story out recently too, Napoleon's codes. He was sending secret messages back to Paris about how he was going to destroy Moscow. This letter is up for auction. It's going to go, they think, for up to like $19,500. So he says at 3 o'clock on the morning of the 22nd, I'm going to blow up the Kremlin. And he signs it, Nap. He had his own personal code. That's the same thing. It's a substitution type of code with various complex series of letters and numbers. This one primarily numbers to get your secret instructions across. Some of the ways they use these now, though, is they bring one of these stories out of the past, put it in mainstream, and talk about it because they're going to do it again or do something very similar to it again. And that could be maybe someone has plans to destroy Moscow. And this just comes out in the clear and no one ever thinks. And even if on the 22nd of whatever month they picked, something happens in Moscow, no one's going to think back to the previous weeks to say, hey, they showed that code. They talked about that. They brought that story up. That tells us they're going to do something. Thinking isn't a spectator sport. Very interesting. we did a little article on the bothersome bodies, all the people that have been mysteriously killed or almost killed recently. Big long list, it never ends. I could do this every week and pick out the best 10 or 12 bothersome bodies. Of course, this guy almost looks like Putin, but it's nobody really. It was just a generic picture for the article. And then, of course, I used the lines from Cell Block Tango, one of the classic musicals. They had it coming, they had it coming, they had it coming all along. I didn't do it, in spite if I'd done it. How could you tell me that I was wrong? Because that's the way they think. They think that they have the power to kill anybody they want. This is one of the guys. He's the guy who wrote the famous book on Princess Diana. He was on his honeymoon with this nice, sweet young lady here. And her name is Carolyn. They were at Kruger National Park in South Africa. And they had an event in this vehicle. This vehicle was being driven by a driver. They weren't driving it, so you can't blame it on him too much. The driver, Johann Scholz, or Schlotz, was going down a road, and he said another car crossed the line, came at them. This is the other car. Inside this car, a woman and a child were killed, and another man was wounded. But the way they crossed the line, it was almost like they were lining them up. It's not the first time, or it'll be the last time, that they might use innocent parties like a woman and child to deflect blame from a certain type of assassination. But this guy had, in his book, Diana, Her True Story, he had a whole bunch of information based on private recordings that the princess made, and a lot of them may be very important even to today. Because she said she was going to rock the world with some of the things she knew. And then, of course, there was only one place on the planet Earth that, someone's ever made a causal link between the assassination of JFK, 9/11, and the death of Diana. So I was looking into the background of Mr. El Fayed. I find his name comes up in 3 of the most important conspiracies the world has ever known. At least in the modern era. And even if I share that information with people, you think you'd almost get like a Pulitzer Prize or something, right? No, you just get that stony cold silence. So who's with the CIA and who's not? But there is a link. We have a link in the article, so you can go back to the article that I posted here on the website and read all about it yourself. Because Muhammad Atta's father used a certain lawyer whose name was El Fayed in Egypt. That's kind of kinky. Of course, we all know the connection of the El Fayeds to Diana. And there was an El Fayed looking after one of the principals in the JFK assassination. It was business partners, which I believe George de Mohrenschildt, the guy who was controlling various assets in that assassination. Very, very exceptional, taking care of business stuff. And then this fine lady passed away in an accident. No one knows who she is, probably, which is a shame. Nina Poppelsdorf, not a household word, but an expert in radiation. The woman who was leading the charge at Fukushima to control one of the greatest accidents, in quotation marks, on the planet Earth. She led the team from Sandia Labs to respond to the disaster. She was killed when a freak wave struck the boat she was in, turned it upside down. 23 other people survived. She was the only fatality for some strange reason. She did a lot of high-tech work for the military-industrial complex at Sandia Labs. They do some really wild stuff. And then our good buddy down here, Saad al-Hili, the guy who was murdered in France in that brutal execution of him, his wife, his mother, and attempted assassination of 2 of his children, and a cyclist, Sylvain Mollier. No one could figure it out too much. Well, it turns out he may have been looking after some of the business aspects of a certain guy, Saddam. And maybe he knew too much, so they took him out. And I've always been amazed from the moment I saw that picture here in the newspaper. See, Saddam's supposed to be in the box after they hung him and they're taking him away. And this guy's standing here. And I'm telling you, okay, he's wearing the garb, right? But I'm telling you, that guy looks more like Saddam than the guy that's in the box. One of the biggest reasons I said that at the time, and I still stand by my words, is the guy in the box had rotten teeth. Saddam was, richer than rich. He could fly to the top dentist anywhere in the world to have something done. The other guy didn't speak English either. How could you be a CIA agent or asset for so long and not speak English? I find that hard to believe. Especially when you're doing the numbers, like, $1 billion for me, $2 billion for you, $3 billion for me, $2 billion for you. You got to know the numbers. The other guy looked like an idiot. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, more bothersome bodies, is the two journalists who were there when they opened up that infamous hole and found Saddam, were both killed in Libya. Bothersome bodies, they get rid of them all the time. Then, of course, the Ambassador Stevens, was killed in Libya as well. Did he know about Saddam too? Or just Muammar? Because I don't think they got Muammar either. The guy they captured just looked like a stuttering old fool. Right? Like, even when you get old, really old, and you see a guy who's been a soldier or a leader all his life, like, you got the stance. Like, when I was a policeman, I worked with a guy who was a child in Nazi Germany. And you had to be in the Hitler Youth whether you liked it or not. Like, it's just, you gotta go. So we were at this police funeral, and we march. And you can't get rid of it, man. He's doing the goose step. So the other guys I'm with are practically peeing their pants. So, one guy's in the back of me there, old Ross, who's probably dead now too, is just going, "Mach schnell, mach schnell." The rest of us are just laughing. And as we're marching through this funeral, and nobody knows why, because maybe they can't see our colleague in the middle doing the perfect goose step. You just can't get it out. There's no way you can hide it. So to be a leader of a country, a ruthless killer, a terribly shrewd, devious person, people, and with a military background as well, and then to see him just like quivering and shivering like a Boy Scout out on a cold night, just doesn't make any sense. You can't take the Marine Corps out of the Marine. It just doesn't happen. So that's another big reason why I thought the guy was a fake. And his gun. He had a nice gun, Browning high power, gold plated and all that kind of stuff, but way passé. That's the model 1935. So yeah, the Canadian Army still uses it, but we're cheapskates. Very good pistol in its day. But if you're the head of state, running away on the lam, you'd probably pick up something, a whole lot more modern, because it shoots better. There's no comparison. You get like the Glock or the Sig Sauer or something like that, like, you're really going to knock down a few targets. And it's nondescript. Okay? So say you're trying to hide, right? And you don't want anybody to know you're Saddam, because you're on the lam, or Gaddafi, or anybody else that's on the lam, right? And then you're just going through your pockets looking for some change to pay for a sandwich or something like that, and you pull out a gold-plated 9mm. Nobody's got one of those. It's a special gift from Fabrique Nationale or something like that. Hey, you kind of look like Colonel Gaddafi. Oh, no, I found this in the street. Come on, the last thing you want is something that's going to call attention to yourself. Or the fact that this turkey got on a telephone and talked to his daughter when he knows everybody's looking for him. Doesn't make any sense. So I say they faked Gaddafi's death, and I'm pretty sure they faked Saddam's death too. They're pretty good at that. It's the only way to get out alive, right? You're dead. A lot of German war criminals went down like that. People would find somebody in Argentina or Paraguay or something, bring back evidence, they go to the German police, they go, "No, sorry, we have a death report. The guy's dead. Don't know what you got, but we're not interested." And they get away. Sort of. This guy didn't get away. He was another one killed. He said he was an Israeli spy. They killed him first and then dragged him through the streets on their motorcycles in this terrible lynch mob. But then as the news comes out, I know it's a fake. Not that they didn't kill somebody or all that kind of stuff, but you know he's not an Israeli spy. Comes out, you know, when they identify the body, that he's really with an Al-Qaeda-backed organization. A guy who was in a prison. He's wanted by everybody. He was in a Hamas prison, tortured for months. And the Israelis were after him for terrorism. Okay, so how does that make you an Israeli spy? I don't think so. Probably just knew too much, so they took him out. There's a picture of him being held by his young daughter, who only understands, that's my dad, and he's not coming back anymore. So it doesn't matter, you know, what you do for whatever you think is the New World Order, you'll get the same result. This chap, he's a martyr, Sergei Magnitsky. He was given evidence about this massive fraud that went on in Moscow. Had to leave the country, was trying to stay someplace safe or whatever. It doesn't work for these guys. Dropped dead in London. So this $230 million fraud the Russians pulled by taking money from a British company, I believe Hermitage Capital Management, funnel it through Universal Savings Bank to Credit Suisse. This guy had the evidence provided to Swiss authorities so he could prove that Russian tax officials and the Russian police were involved in this swindle and stole this money. And then he drops. So that's part of, you know, just the quantum nature of the world too, is that you're doing the right thing. You're doing amazing the right thing. And you have to succumb to something like this. Another bizarre one is these two chefs. Worked at the Fat Duck. Carl Lindgren and Ivan George. So the Fat Duck is this, you know, great restaurant in Hong Kong owned by one of the top chefs in the world. And it just comes to my mind because of that old story, Who's Killing the Great Chefs of Europe, that you just see these guys get killed. So seemingly this bus driver passes out for a little while, hits their car, a taxi that they were riding in, kills the taxi driver too. It's crushed between two buses. And they took him out alive. They died later in hospital. And you just got to wonder, like, is there something behind this? So the guy who owns the restaurant, his name is Blumenthal, and he's a master chef, great repute, like he cooks for the Queen. He did the Queen's Jubilee picnic. He got a seat in the Queen's box at the Jubilee or something, or near to her box. He's got to be one of the greatest chefs in Europe, TV star, all sorts of things. And you got to wonder, did they know something? These guys were probably working at the event or something very similar at another venue. Did they know something and they got took out? Because it's just a really bizarre death. This chap, a blogger in Iran, Sattar Beheshti, died of shock. The shock of being tortured to death. As much as we blaspheme Iran, Iran did something about this. The head of the internet police was fired. General Saeed Shakrian. So that's a good thing. Yeah, he died of shock. No, he died from shock. He died from Shakrian, the general. Should have put him in jail too for murder, but at least they did something. They fired him. I don't think we'll ever see some of these turkeys at Guantanamo going down for the stuff they've been doing. We have our old Georgism in there. When the facts have to be fudged, the goose has to be cooked. It's just a fact of life. The truth will always come out. You don't have to go after these bloggers. If they make a mistake or they're in error, we'll figure it out. You know, you bring a guy on the evening news in the Bozo the Clown suit, hey, we'll figure it out. Then another strange death, I didn't hear about this one when it happened, was the Libyan security chief, the guy who went after the militias that killed the ambassador. They blew him away. Colonel Faraj al-Derzi, shot dead by 3 gunmen in Benghazi. So another guy who knew too much or knew where the loot was or something along that line. And a funny thing too is, like, even his picture disappeared off the internet. I'm lucky I had a copy on my hard drive because the page just goes blank when the original source picture's gone, so they didn't want us to look at his mug later. And here's another hero. He's the guy who exposed the melamine scandal in China. Jiang Welzhou. He's trying to improve the dairy industry. So they put a price on his head of $500,000 won. So he saved, or 6 babies died, 290,000 were made sick from this melamine put in the milk. And who knows how many lives he saved because he exposed this scandal. He's a hero. And one of the bothersome bodies. And then the other guy who they say killed Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, trying his infamous glove on, but a serial killer has come clean and said he did it. OJ put him up to it, so he's still guilty of murder if that's the case, but he said he did it. And the glove didn't fit for a reason. Another bothersome body that comes out of the time capsule that's not added to this is a chap named Frank Olson. Frank Olson was a career CIA man, doctor, top-notch individual, and he's working for the beast. Maybe doesn't know he's working for the beast to the extent that he is working for the beast. And what does the monster do with its own people frequently is they killed him. In 1953, he raised concerns about testing chemical and biological weapons on human subjects without their consent. Not a good thing. His sons have finally filed a lawsuit against the CIA because they feel they've been lied to tooth and nail for pretty much all of their lives. But what really happened to their dad? The CIA admitted giving him LSD in a drink without his knowledge or consent, and somehow he fell from the 13th floor of the Statler Hotel in New York City as opposed to being pushed. Although the kids have read the CIA assassination manual and everything about his body, including marks on his temple that they found in a subsequent autopsy when they dug him up in the 90s, showed that he had a blow to the head first. Drugged, blow to the head, throw him out the window. Don't know what page it's on, but it's the CIA assassination manual. The CIA says everything came out in the MK Ultra hearings, but then they had the director shred all the evidence and documents that were probably most important. But Nelson Rockefeller Commission, the Church Committee, I think it was the Pike Committee as well back in the 70s, looked into a lot of this stuff. The Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research. Some health, they throw you out the window. Same thing happened to Secretary of Defense. They named the aircraft carrier too, threw him out the window as well. I guess that was a popular assassination manual back then. He said there was like a conspiracy going on with a shadow government trying to do stuff. He said he was nuts. Put him in Bethesda Naval Hospital. But the trouble is, they say he jumped out the window. And when I found some old documents about what happened, there's scratch marks all over the window frame. And when you're going out, you usually just jump. Scratch marks are from when somebody's pushing you out and you're trying to keep yourself in. Frank Olson was a bioweapons expert. He worked in specialized aerobiology. You could put that in a chemtrail, eh? And then I know from a friend of mine whose family was murdered on the Soviet bloc side about what they were doing with some of that stuff. So the Ruskies developed an antidepressant type medication that they used to spray in aerosol form in Afghanistan. And what this thing would do is just short out your brain and put you in jihad mode, and you'd kill all your kill whoever's around you. You just go absolutely psycho. And then you gotta wonder, when you have a mass shooting, a school shooting or something like that, and then you find out later, of course, these guys are in all kinds of psychiatric beds and they're taking them to, gross proportions and such. Was it the gun? Or was it the Prozac that fried all the circuitry in their brains? Because nobody in the public media knows about the classified projects, and if they do, they're not going to tell you. But it's all there in our history. Olson traveled to Europe 1953, London, Paris, Norway, West Germany, and he witnessed what were called extreme interrogations where the CIA committed murder using biological agents that Dr. Olson had developed. He didn't like that. One of the other doctors, William Sargent, a psychiatrist with British MI6, didn't like him, ratted him out, said the man's a security risk. He might talk. He's not happy with torturing people to death. Like all these other whack jobs. So he was concerned. They lifted his security status, wouldn't let him have classified information. Placed a memo in his file saying he violated security restrictions. Then he attends a meeting at Deep Creek, Maryland, unwittingly drinks from a bottle of Cointreau laced with LSD. Other scientists from the CIA in attendance, Sidney Gottlieb and Robert Lashbrook, are supposed to have been responsible for this. 5 days later, Olson told a colleague, Vincent Rouet, that he was considering resigning. Resign? No one resigns! They took him to New York, said he had a psychiatric problem. Hey, that's what they did with Forrestal. Might be dangerous to his family. Yeah, see, you know how you're dangerous to your family when you're Olson? Isn't they kick in a door and blast everybody with a machine gun taking you out? He was examined by an allergist, Harold Abramson. He gave him sedatives. He recommended he be hospitalized for psychiatric treatment. Okay, you got an allergist telling you you're a nut bar and they're going to lock you up. Makes sense. So they don't take him to a psychiatric hospital. They take him to the Statler Hotel. They have 2 martinis. Everybody goes to bed. And the other turkeys wake up in the middle of the night, Gottlieb and Abramson, and say, "Hey, who left the window open?" Oh, he fell. So somebody on the staff overheard their conversation. Lashbrook calls the CIA and he says, "Well, he's gone." And the guy on the other end goes, "That's too bad." So now the family's suing them, and hopefully they'll get a whack load of money. 23 years after that happened, of course, back in those 70s days, former Vice President Dick Cheney, then Deputy Chief of Staff to Gerald Ford, wrote a memorandum to former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, Ford's Chief of Staff at the time, saying that lawsuit could result in the release of classified information. So they gave each member of the Olson family $187,500 as part of a settlement, saying, "We spilled the beans, everything's out on the table, it's okay." But unfortunately they didn't. That's when they did the autopsy, found the hematoma in his skull, and realized that they'd been lied to, so that's why they're suing again. And I hope they get everything they can get, and then some. But it just shows you. When I talked about this movie that's out, I can't find the whole copy on the internet or anything like that. Maybe it's out there. I think it was called The Kill Room or The Killing Room. What they've done, what they've always done, would just drive any normal person insane. Where they just take some test subjects and kill them and see what people will do to react. And then make a game out of who's going to get out. And kill more and more and more. It's savagely sadistic, but it's probably the God's honest truth. And I'll bet you that's the real thing, the real deal about what goes on in the secret place at Guantanamo. They make Manchurians there. Just like in the Manchurian Candidate. They tell the guy, just here's a gun, go to that guy and kill him. Okay, I'll do it. Without any thought or emotion, pop them. And get into a state where you can't tell if you're in a dream world or in reality. Almost sounds like a guy who pulled the trigger at a movie theater recently, so they say. Then there was another bothersome body, one that I missed. But it's not too late. It's a very important bothersome body. This guy was the captain of the USS Harry Truman. It was last year. Captain Tashar R. Temby was walking off the ship, and he just drops dead. They said he has this massive coronary problem, age 49. And I'm going like, okay, I'm not stupid. To get to be captain of a big aircraft carrier like that usually means you're a Top Gun pilot. And Top Gun pilots are really, really fit. I mean, really, really fit. Even old Top Gun pilots are really, really fit. And the only way usually they have a heart attack is, after you pump them full of lead or something, or the plane crashes, then the heart gives out. But they're tough. I mean, really tough. Just to go on some of their survival training exercises and stuff, or just to go through Top Gun school. Here, pick up a Jeep, put it on your back, run 20 miles. I'll do it. They're the best of the best. See, and the other big thing about guys like that, because they're flying like these planes at like Mach 6 and 7 and turning around and, upside down, loop the loop and all that kind of stuff, like, man, you really got to have your heart together and the rest of your organs. Why, they give you a pressure suit to hold them together. Like, you're the fittest of the fit. And you get, before you go on trips like that and stuff, like, you got to, like, qualify all the time with your medicals. All the time. Because, you're zipping along at Mach 2.5 and you got a plane loaded up with enough bombs to take out a few square blocks of anything. Like, it's kind of important that the lights don't go out. So they're tested all the time. He's on a top combat warship with nuclear weapons. Goes without saying, it's got to have nuclear weapons on it. He just had a physical test that day. It was a stress type of test. A couple hours earlier, everything was fine. He's just walking off the ship. Plump, he's gone. So then, of course, being a conspiracy theorist to some degree, we have to wonder, he died around 11:30 a.m. The crew was told at 1:15. So you got, that classic 311 or 311s or 33. You got the Masonic code in there because he probably didn't die exactly at 11:30. That's just what they say to tell you it's one of their deals. The crew was told at 1:15. It's a 511 backwards, so all their big power numbers are on there. He was born in Bombay, India. Grew up in New York City. 3 decades in the Navy. Executive officer, the Dwight D. Eisenhower. Commanding officer, Strike Fighter Squadron 87, based in Virginia Beach. He was on the Amphibious Transport Dock, Nashville. He was a flight instructor and a test pilot. So the autopsy results were released like 3 months later. Heart condition, arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Replaced by Captain D. Mewborn. They also got the ship's exec off as well, which is kind of strange. He was promoted off, which is, kind of the way things work in the Navy. Captain Craig Clapperson took over immediately after he died for 4 days, and then he was promoted off the ship to take command of another ship where the commanding officer is being relieved. He's going to be he is commanding officer of the Mount Whitney. The other thing I find in the article that comes with that little stuff is, you got these people of command rank, a captain, another guy is a commander, one's going to be on the USS Mount Whitney, the other guy the USS Fort McHenry. They're both, just given the boot. Is unqualified for command and stuff. So, it takes a long time in the Navy to end up be a commander or a captain and get to be, actually in charge of a big ship that's going to go to war and stuff like that. Like, usually you're the best of the best, the top of your class. And then as I look at some of these things lately, it's just like, they're dropping these guys left, right, and center. There's an article on the net about like 22, 23 command rank officers, commanders, and captains all being relieved of duty. Like, how can you have that many, like, you've been in the service for 20, 30 years. You haven't figured the guy's a screwball yet. He's promoted, gets more authority, and then you get the boot. It's really strange. Let's see here. Something even more strange is Agent 99 was right on track with this USS Harry S. Truman, as you know, is going to be the lone warrior in the Gulf soon. But she's been prepared with some secret equipment. The X-47B Unmanned Combat Air System Demonstrator. Maybe something that's going to elicit a false flag or be involved in some very intricate things. So let's play this little baby. It's a short little clip just to show you what it is, what's been put on the ship, why maybe they had to get rid of the captain, the first officer, because maybe they're not going with the flow. It seems this captain was a very decent guy. Most of the sailors said he was the best captain they ever had in the Navy, ever, period.
A team from the Navy Unmanned Combat Air System Program Office delivered an X-47B Unmanned Combat Air System demonstrator to USS Harry S. Truman November 26th in preparation for the first ever carrier-based unmanned aircraft test. The X-47B, which has a wingspan of more than 62 feet, will demonstrate seamless integration into carrier flight deck operations through various tests. During each demonstration, the X-47B will be controlled remotely by a handheld control display unit. The X-47B test will be conducted over a 3-week period, which will include in-port and underway demonstrations aboard Truman. From the Defense Media Activity, I'm Petty Officer Shannon Burns.
Okay, that's a little wacky. That's a U.S. Navy production type thing too. So that's like an official source. And I guess you can't hide the fact you're bringing that little airplane on board. Everybody's going to wonder, hey, look at that thing. Doesn't have a pilot. Wonder what that's for. And so you got to have some kind of cock and bull story to go with it. People will see it take off, go around, know what it is. But you got a perfect thing to have a false flag operation with. One less witness. You don't have a pilot. Something's cooking. Another bothersome body. Paraguay peasant leader Vidal Vega shot dead. So seemingly they took all the peasants' land a long time ago, 50 years ago, gave it to the dictator under the rule of Generalissimo Alfredo Stroessner. These people were trying to get their land back. There was a big clash. There was deaths of supporters, 6 supporters, or 6 police, 11 supporters, 6-11 upside down, backwards, 9/11 type thing. Died last June in an operation to evict farmers from their land. See, that's the trouble with a lot of people is they don't understand. You see this horrible loss of life on both sides. There isn't a them and an us. There's only us. When brother kills brother, you're killing yourself. So this guy was going to testify at an upcoming trial. 2 gunmen arrived at his home, shot him early on Sunday. He's gone. Not a well-known bothersome body, but it just shows you the level of courage that exists in a lot of people to do the right thing, in spite of the fact that they're risking their life for it. Happens in countries all over the world. Doesn't seem to happen enough in the country I live in or the one south of the border, but it does happen a lot. And if enough people stand up and be counted and change the channel, they can't get away with that kind of crap. WikiLeaks founder got a lung infection. A bothersome body that's still alive, and we worry and hope that that's not a fatal condition. And then the big squealer at the time, Bradley Manning, supposed to have been tortured or abused a little bit while he was in custody, because he's a whistleblower and actually told us the truth about what's in all those secret documents, presented them to the public. Something that got into media hands. And just another classic example of the quantum universe. Here's a guy who may have averted World War III, who told the truth about all the untruths that are being done by the government, who say they're telling the truth. And then they say because he told the truth and exposed the truth about all the untruths that they did, is somehow he's bad and the liars and killers who cheat us are good. It's got to be a quantum universe. So he goes to jail. They said he gave aid and comfort to the enemy, but if we told the truth, we wouldn't have an enemy and there'd be no need to kill anybody. Maybe that's why friends don't let friends drive with a brain. And then Putin is supposed to have some kind of back injury. He didn't get to have a visit from the Japanese Prime Minister because they said he suffered some kind of injury of some sort, probably in judo or, taking on a lion or a tiger or something like that. But, who knows with these guys. Maybe he got some of that polonium in his kidneys and he just can't get it out. I told you to give it to that guy in England, you fool. President Bush, the big one with more initials, George H.W. Bush in hospital, a little bit of bronchitis and lung infections and stuff like that. A guy who's just a living example of the quantum universe, saying he's good and killing whole villages of undesirables in the Cheney-Rumsfeld or pre-Cheney-Rumsfeld horrible world that they create. Those are guys who won't be going to another dimension as we get time for a video on that, talking about rising above our circumstances. Not only is it a quantum universe, but it's a universe with multiple dimensions. We can't deny that they exist because it's been scientifically proven they do exist. And there may be areas or portions of the universe where there's a flux, where they come into being or not into being. See, we can't see them because we only have 3 dimensions. So we can't even know they exist. They could be right beside us, but we have no means of feeling it, seeing it, touching it, tasting it, or understanding it. So to us it doesn't exist. It's like a non-entity, a non-space. And perhaps on the other side they can see us or not. It's difficult to say. Hopefully they're very selective about what they let come across. Bangladeshi fire, we didn't have time for that last week, but you've probably heard about it. Typical sweatshop thing just outside of Bangladesh. Over 100 people dead. I think the final death toll was around 120 something. And then of course the company will give them about 1,160 Australian dollars to each family victim. The Australian dollar is a little better than the Canadian one, and that makes it a little better than the American one frequently. So gives you some idea what they're getting. Workers couldn't come down. There was no health and safety or fire safety like we have and expect in the industrialized world. And part of it is because of this constant offshoring of resources and stuff like that. So we don't have jobs and other people get jobs. And then the downside is you die. This is a little snippet from a surveillance video. So they were trying to allege that this woman here in the pink is an arsonist, but I don't believe that at all. I think basically what she was doing is just trying to, sneak a fag. I don't mean a homosexual, I mean a cigarette. I'm older, we said that a long time ago. So she, has her smoke and then leaves to go back to work. And then lo and behold, she dropped that little smoldering ruin in a bucket of clothes. And like I've said many, many times, one of the biggest reasons I'm a proponent of surplus clothing is because it's not made to burn, right? Because the military's always in fights and combats and stuff like that. Shells going off, things burn. They don't want you to burn. You take any modern made in China or Bangladesh garment and put a match to it. You want to talk about fire starter? Look out, baby. You are gonna burn. It's just unbelievable how that stuff goes up. So as it starts to go, people run to the area. There are fire extinguishers, and the woman returns. So if she was an arsonist and she knew what she did, you're out the door, right? You're not coming back. But because you were sneaking a cigarette, you're going oh shit, I didn't butt it out. It caught fire. Now I'm in trouble. I'm going to lose my job. So your colleagues come in and say, oh, don't worry, girl. We'll move clothes out of the way, try to stop the source of ignition here. Other guys come running in with fire extinguishers. We'll put it out. Don't worry, girl. But they couldn't get on top of it, and it just got worse and worse and worse because this stuff goes up like gasoline. And then we have to wonder, if after it's all over and the place looks like that, how many of those people at the beginning died. And then history repeats itself. This is the exact same scenario when we had sweatshops here in the United States and started a labor movement before my grandparents were born to try to have rules. We had the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City, March 25th, 1911. 146 garment workers killed. Same type of thing. They couldn't get out of the building. The buildings were death traps. Everybody got a small pittance. There's nice memorials all over the place, but the big thing it comes down to is no health and safety rules or regulations. People working way too long, way too hard for next to nothing, so you can have cheap junk. But the big thing is so greed economics can come into play, and the owners of these places can pocket tons of money without the slightest share of the wealth. The funny thing about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory is the owner was actually there with his children and got stuck in the fire. They evac to the roof. And some of the survivors in this building evac to the roof too, and were saved. In a modern building, something to check about in places you work. Because shit happens. Is that your fire escape is a separate stairwell. See, where I work, the fire escape doesn't take you to the ground floor. It goes to the bottom, takes you outside. You can't get into the building from those stairwells. They're fire escapes. They take you out. It's a dead, you can't go anywhere except out into the street. So if the building's on fire, unlike these people, they came down the stairwell, they're at the source of ignition or another part of the fire, and they're overwhelmed with smoke and they died. There wasn't adequate fire escapes in 1911 either. Nobody cared. There were no rules about anything like that. What's wrong with a few rules like that for health and safety to keep people alive, to pay them a living wage? Not a whole lot. An article that goes with it about, just labor history. Samsung production staff forced to work 16 hours a day and given 1 day off a month. Factor that into your life. You buy these gadgets and gizmos, somebody's slaved to death over this. And a lot of them are held almost like in prisoner status. 65,000 employees working in horrible conditions like that. And it was like that in the United States too, as I read in my book, The Crisis of the Old Order. And you look at how bad was. It was horrible. And not just, even these guys in a sweatshop probably have something a little better. There's a big conference going on in the world. It's kind of inappropriate because of, how you watch this show and all this kind of stuff. But it's the World Internet Conference, the United Nations Internet Conference, Global Campaigns for the Free and Open Web, which is probably an oxymoron. It's probably not. That's Google's drawing. You probably saw things on Google pages talking about free speech and such like that recently. 193 nations at an 11-day meeting to propose regulatory changes to the Internet, including things about maybe making you pay for your services to go across borders. Just like you'd pay if you got a pipeline, it goes across the border, they make you pay some kind of fee or tax to have the privilege of taking it across. Of course, the fact that it's run by the United Nations, and the fact they didn't tell anybody about it until it actually starts practically, so you really can't make any submissions to your government. Some of the big corporations are there too. The United States contingent has 123 people going, so they could have had some time to maybe tell us, scumdogs at the bottom end, that they got some plans. It's one of the funny little anecdotes to some of the articles. UN Telecommunications Agency dates back to 1865. Okay, I got my pencil and my paper here and I'm doing the math. 1865, there was no United Nations. Where did they come up with this one from? Even a League of Nations wasn't around back then. But I guess it's just maybe the globalism, the disease. I guess it won't be riots because they hold some of these meetings in the Middle East and they take care of business really well. Shocking. You die. Syria turned off the internet, fighting around their main airport. Stuff here, wiretapping the web. Guys come up with a new program so he can monitor Skype calls in real time. He's trying to work on letting the intelligence agencies have complete control over these voice over internet protocols. FBI is pushing for powers to force internet chat providers to build in backdoors so that agents can wiretap suspects' communications. See, I make it easy for them. I just do a show and broadcast it and say, hey, this is what it's like, baby, To another group called Silent Circle, allows users to encrypt a range of different forms of communication from almost any mobile device. Just in case you need to form a silent circle somewhere, you know where to look. And then who gets caught in this, of course, is, when they went after Petraeus and this General Allen and stuff like that. Basically, it was just on an FBI agent going rogue and using the assets of the state to go after this guy because one of his friends admittedly a voluptuous chick of some sort or another, told him, that she's dissed by somebody and, she wants to know who it is. So on his own initiative, he starts getting people in one of those task groups or something to use all their equipment for their own personal interests, to open up and read something in the neighborhood of 20 to 30,000 emails. Can you imagine how much time that would take? If that's even true. But the whole big thing is, this police state Stasi apparatus went after the people in charge of the police state Stasi apparatus. And, you got bit by your own snake. And all this ends up in the public media. One of the persons who was a hardcore person pushing this was Democratic Representative Jane Harman, one of the most outspoken defenders of the illegal Bush National Security Agency warrantless eavesdropping program. And then they eavesdropped on her communications with a suspected Israeli agent over alleged attempts to intervene on behalf of AIPAC officials accused of espionage. Well, then she didn't like it so much after that. The hypocrisy is so deep, you can drown in it. In the series and report, Top Secret America, the NSA intercepts and stores 1.7 billion emails, phone calls, and other types of communication. Well, it's one thing you do that. Well, once in a while, like I lose something, and I can't find it anymore. There's something I wrote, something I read. No matter how hard I try, I can't find it. They should have a 1-800-NSA number where you can just say, hey, look, you guys got all my stuff anyway. I lost this one and I can't find it. Can I have it? Can you send me a copy? Or you bugged all my phone calls, right? And somebody said I did something and I didn't. And you got the audio anyway. Can I have it? Just to say that, I'm a good guy, really? There should be a 1-800-NSA number for that. You got it anyway. Let's use it for something good. There's a big construction project going on in Israel that the United States government is paying for. Of course, they don't tell you that because your congressmen and senators probably got like little pieces of paper like this with nothing on it except BS, and then there's no place to reply, and you think that's the whole stellar part of the earth. Well, underneath the earth, they're building this big secret base, 5 stories. $100 million of American taxpayer money? Oh, no. $500 million. U.S. has spent in total, and this is just a $100 million installment. 5 floors underground, shock-resistant doors. Going to take 2 years to build. Very, very secure construction workers to get into this place. They have a massive air base, too, in Nevatim in the desert. But this base is going to have 3 underground floors of roughly 41,000 square feet each. It's going to be called Site 911. Can I get a little corner, do the show? Maybe nobody's going to split that Mount Megiddo, and save you a whole lot of time and effort. And so now the Israelis are also working on a new deadly virus thing that makes viruses commit suicide. All kinds of good stuff. West Nile, Ebola, SARS, bird flu. They just croak. So this guy, Erez Livne, CEO and founder of the new biotech company Vikoi Nanomedicines, has this invention that'll do that. And he works at Singularity University, NASA's Ames research base in California, where all the really good globalists go to make that new form of life that will transcend and be better than humans, will be a superior form of life. We will be like mere insects to the creature from Singularity University. The ultimate computer in some sort of humanoid form that has evolved way past the Homo sapien. You gotta wonder if this kind of research is like to get rid of us. Maybe there's part of that 41,000 square feet on one of those floors where they're working on the ultimate virus that makes other cells just commit suicide. So they found the Achilles heel of these viruses is called their cell host recognition site. And using nanotechnology, they give the virus two choices: latch on to the decoy host trap and die, or mutate in such a way that it cannot penetrate real host cells and die. You gotta wonder. U.S. set to establish a new spy network as big as the CIA. CIA is pretty big. And the CIA put together something called the National Clandestine Service. This is going to be a part of the Defense Intelligence Agency. It's going to be called the Defense Clandestine Service. You can't have enough clandestine services, let me tell you. They'll be closely aligned with the CIA and military commando units. They'll share equipment and training and such like this. So the Defense Intelligence Agency Director, Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn, says, this is the way to go. They're looking at 1,600 clandestine operatives called collectors. Remember a book about some guy who kidnaps girls and uses them for sadistic pleasures, being called the collector. You wonder what they're going to be collecting. Then there's a really big story in Ohio about a sinkhole. And I think I have something I can use, even though I didn't preload it, but I think we can play this puppy here. And it'll show us the sinkhole. It's a little news clip. Let's see if this thing buffers.
I found an attorney I know I can trust. I went to wavy.com and clicked on the experts page.
Find the experts on your side, only at wavy.com.
Okay, here it comes. Okay, what happened? Technical difficulty, or they just blast us out of here or something?
I found an attorney I know I can trust. I went to wavy.com and clicked on the experts page.
Find the experts on your side, only at wavy.com.
Well, anyway, I guess we can skip the video and look at the... Oh, there, okay, now it's coming alive. You got a big whopping hole there anyway. That's kinky. Well, there's just a still picture here on the edge. But, you just Google, Sinkhole, Ohio, you'll find it. It is a whop-ass hole there. So then Agent 99 does some research on this and comes up with a few jewels. They found something in the hole. Oh, that was my previous one from the Louisiana sinkhole, same thing. But anyway, what they found in there is 6 million tons, or pardon me, 6 million pounds of explosives next to the hole. 6 million pounds. That's a crap load of explosives. And then we have to remember what happened in Louisiana at this military base next to the Louisiana sinkhole. There was this massive explosion. It was large enough to be, have a Richter scale number. People right across the state hearing it. So now somebody found these explosives near this sinkhole. We have a growing sinkhole on top of a massive hydrocarbon vault with explosives stored at this military base, they said, because they were demolishing or demobilizing these explosives. We gotta wonder. Okay, now that's two. Not a big pattern. You got people putting lots and lots of explosives, tons and tons of explosives underground on, what could be that super duper fault line that runs up through the middle of the United States. Are they trying to make Casey's prophecy happen? The last thing you'd expect to find next to that hole would be 6 million. Well, it's just for personal use, You gotta have a show that's a catalyst for somebody to tell you. See, everybody's going to talk about the sinkhole. Nobody's going to pick up on the 6 million pounds of explosives. Much. Bank of England. Mr. King's on the way out because We got our Bank of Canada governor taking over the Bank of England, Mr. Carney, noted Bilderberger, Goldman Sachs dupe, the best man money can buy, taking over the helm. So one of the deputy guys, Andrew Haldane, was in the British press saying, the economy is as bad as a world war. The financial crisis has left us with a debt that will be paid by our grandchildren. And the trouble with those grandchildren is they're not going to have like union jobs here in America and Canada and stuff like that. Not going to have any jobs at all, maybe, because everything's put offshore. And then they're going to have something like this called a piece of paper, and then this weapon of mass deception, the pen, and they're not going to know, like, how to do the numbers to figure even out how much debt you got and what you can do about it. And they're sure not bright enough to pick up an old book like this that's going to give you all the answers. You're doomed. But that's what they said. So they're going to raid pensions of the wealthy and, basically put a rope around everybody's neck and just strangle them to death to pay off this debt, instead of just changing the money system and going to a country-created money system. By the way, Mary sent me a little piece on the Basel III thing. Comes into effect January 1st, 2013. Gold goes from a Tier 3 asset to a Tier 1. Tier 1 is better than government bonds and stuff like that. Becomes like real money. And as we told before, like gold is like a quantum thing. It's a asset type thing, a commodity, but it's also real buckaroos. When Basel III comes into play, the quantum will be on the flip side. That is going to be the money of money, period. Because there's no debt obligation attached to it, and it's round, not too heavy, and in your hand all the time. Doesn't matter what somebody does on the other side of the world, it's in your hand. You ain't got none, you better get some. Because when this little monkey comes apart, that's all there's going to be, baby. Moody's cuts AAA rating of the ESM. So the European Stability Mechanism, the thing that's going to save Europe, is having their credit worthiness lowered. And just like we said before, when they did it to the EFSF, they had their credit rating lowered. That's the European Financial Stability Facility. It's probably near the toilet, and it's got an extra big lever on it to flush because she's going down. So when you go to other media sources, very important to go to other media sources. I don't hesitate to go to other countries, or if I can read it and understand it, I'll go there. So the good Lord said, look at Pravda. I look at Pravda, I see this article, Russia, China, and the U.S. challenge rating agencies. It's not that the U.S. did it, but a certain rating company in the United States did it. So they created a new rating agency. They say the big three, Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's, are inadequate because they lie. They're inadequate. Of course they're inadequate. You could be 1,000 meters underwater. Everything's fine. There are no faults in the machine. Everything is fine. AAA, AAA, AAA. Everything's fine. They give me my drugs. They pay me my money. Everything's fine. Fine, fine. And you're dumb enough to believe them. You put your investments in a certain place and everything's gone. There is no money. You lost it all. I still got my drugs and they gave me some money. But the other people are figuring it out. So the Chinese rating agency, Daegong Global, and American Egan-Jones, and the Russians Rus Rating are putting together their own band. And they're going to report the numbers. So just before it goes gone, you're going to know. It's going to be called the Universal Credit Rating Group. Of course, they will never be quoted in the major business press or internet sites or anything because everything's fine, fine, fine. They gave me my drugs. They give me my money. Everything's fine. But if you're worried, check out the other guys. German MPs approved Greece bailout by a big cash majority because they didn't have any choice, They put a gun to your head, say the whole ship's going down, And if you say, everything's fine, they give me my money, you won't be on the bothersome body list. Eurozone unemployment, it's new high, especially in some of the troubled countries. Bad news for them. Who needs a job? You want a job, go to a sweatshop. And then this article, it's the beginning of the American financial collapse. As they fall off the cliff or whatever, there's no way they can pay this stuff, ever. They've gone too far. They don't even understand the basics. The basics are in this book, like 2 or 3 pages. You can get the PhD of stuff. But there is an option for you. Even some companies are figuring it out. This company's called William Ashley. They're big on, all kinds of more high-end products and stuff like that. So they have, instead of gift cards, they do gift cards, but they have gift coins. And what really blew me away is this isn't like, they got chocolate inside some gold wrapper or something like that. This one here, when I read the fine print on it, is 1 ounce of pure silver. You got a $50 coin, a $100 coin, and this $500 coin. I really think that's gold. That's not a real gold coin. It would be smaller compared to the silver, perhaps. Much smaller, but maybe it's silver painted gold. Not too sure exactly what it's made out of, but they're getting into like a little bit of precious metals here, man, even if it's just silver, because they realize the bottom's dropping out. And those plastic cards aren't going to be worth crap, and the paper money is going to be used for toilet paper because the toilet paper is more valuable. And this has happened before. This one's just kind of cute. I've talked about it before. The little chips, casino chips, some of them were pure silver coins that they used at all the various houses of ill repute in Nevada. It's been an old tradition, even going back to Roman times. They found one in the Thames, the soldier's nookie coin. A little worse for wear after all these years, but I don't know if it's still changeable for crimes of passion or something. Argentina to pay hedge funds $1.3 billion. Well, they're not going to do it. They were just told to do it. So the Argentine tall ship Libertad was detained in Ghana as a request from NML Capital Limited because they owe all this money and they can't pay it back. So the genius of these guys seizing a ship takes a lot of money to put a boat away, a big one. Like, for what the thing's worth and how much you got to pay to take care of it, it's hardly worth it. So symbolic, but really done. Takes a lot of money to park a ship somewhere. But seemingly they owe these people all this money and they can't pay it back, and nobody can. Nobody can. HSBC investigation. That's the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank of China, is doing high-level money laundering and sending ill-gotten gains to the island of Jersey. This was in the Telegraph, I believe, British paper. They already paid $1 billion in fines in the United States for breaking money laundering rules. And thousands of people, thanks to a whistleblower, hasn't been killed yet and is not named in this article, gave this out to the tax and customs people, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs Investigation Agency. They got all the details, so they know where all this money is going. Then in Greece, a Greek journalist was threatened with prosecution after disclosing details of Greek account holders who are on something called the Lagarde list, after Christine Lagarde, about all their people evading taxes, leaving you to pay the bill while they go offshore. The EU people can't work out a budget. They're nose to nose. You can't settle the fiscal cliff thing. They're nose to nose. We're in a lot of trouble. This cliff is coming fast and furious. And hopefully doesn't need guns to take it out. Let's see here. Let's listen to this guy. He's up on top of some of this stuff.
My name is Charlie McGrath. I'm the founder of WideAwakeNews.com and a host on the Rinse Radio Network. Unraveling. If things are unraveling before our very eyes in this country, around this world. I have a question that you must ask yourself. How much longer will this continue? How much longer will government pretend we are in recovery? How much longer will government pretend they have your best interest at heart? How much longer will they continue this veil over this crisis of reality that is imminent? It's before us. It's happening almost on a daily basis at this point. You know, I talked to my friend Warren Pollock today after almost 2 weeks of not being able to contact him because he lives in New York City. Warren Pollock, very successful individual, former vice president of a Wall Street firm, done very well with his life, forced to defend himself from looters with a shotgun because a Category 1 storm came through New York City 2 weeks ago, and he hasn't had electricity until today. Do you think for 1 second, if the government can't, with billions and billions of dollars being spent in the name of preparation, do you think the government cannot get even basic necessity needs to the people of New York City, the biggest city in this country? If they can't get necessity items to these folks on the tail end of a Category 1 hurricane, do you think for 1 second, when a crisis of reality hits this nation, they will be there to take care of you, regardless of where you are? The answer is simple. No, absolutely not. They've spent billions and billions of dollars in the name of preparation. So what are they preparing for? What are they buying millions of emergency food resources and inventory for? What are they buying this for? What are they buying the millions and billions of rounds of ammunition for? It isn't to protect the people. It is to protect government. Government is concerned with government. If we've learned anything over the last decade, it is government is concerned with itself. It's concerned with preserving itself, preserving its power, and if that means extending tyrannical control over the people of this country, well, they got the apparatus in place to do just that. How much longer can we continue? We have a nation that is divided over one of the most divisive elections in our history. We have an economic situation that continues to plummet, and we have the perfect catalyst. We have this fiscal cliff coming that we will be able to blame one another for the situation we are in and have civil unrest from coast to coast. We're not talking a Katrina or a Sandy in this region or that region. We're talking about the potential for an absolute credit freeze that will make the situation in New York spread across this country almost overnight. Please ask yourself this question. Are you prepared to take care of yourself? If you cannot answer that question to the affirmative, it is time to stop just listening to alternative media and thinking of it as entertainment, but taking the advice seriously and considering if you have a plan to take care of yourself or your loved ones if the situation arises. Because if you look around this world, you look at the mainstream media, they're forewarning you what's coming. There is a disaster coming. Get ready for it. Make sure you are mentally and physically prepared for what is coming. Stories are attached. Please pay attention and ask yourself this question. Are you ready to take care of yourself in an event of a disaster? Stories are attached. That's all I got.
Okay. A nice little warning commercial. One of the things I would add, as a man with some religious values, is you're not just taking care of yourself. You have to take care of other people too. You just can't let your neighbors die or suffer or this or that. So when you're prepared, you have to be prepared to look after some of the people, probably people who don't believe the slightest thing you have to say, maybe even antagonistic to you to some degree. Because that's just the right way to do things, is to share the wealth, share the resources that you have. Fighting over it with arms or something is not something I would prefer to see in any way, shape, or form. DuPont is sending in former cops to enforce their seed patents to just go snooping onto farms. Don't even have law enforcement capacity in any way, shape, or form, and they're going to gather evidence and force people to, show the books on those nasty Roundup Ready seeds, so to make sure you're not violating patents, so the big corporation can take your wealth. And then a big breakthrough. Dr. Brzezinski, the Texas doctor who fights and beats cancer, has finally had the dogs called off. The Texas Medical Board ends a 4-year battle with case dismissed. And a little sanity exists on the planet Earth. Of course, mainstream media will probably never mention his name. Asparagus is the latest weapon in the fight against diabetes. I hear this diabetes is just going absolutely apeshit for a lot of people who are eating probably garbage or genetically modified garbage of one sort or another. It's almost like a big crisis. And of course, if we get into this crisis, like this chap said, you might not have access to insulin or a lot of other diabetic products, and that could be a life-threatening situation to you. Asparagus has an extract in it that significantly works on insulin production in tests. So if you got to have something in your veggie garden and you have a problem with insulin, that might be it. Flu jabs, complete waste of taxpayers' money, frontline articles in Britain. As I just said, it's just a complete, the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, CIDRAP at the University of Minnesota, did a study. They said they're misleading the public about the true effectiveness of the jab. It's hindering the development of new vaccines. Basically a big cash cow for big pharma at probably your expense. You know, terrible thing. A couple of weeks ago, someone shepherd in my, I'm the shepherd, but one of my flock passed away suddenly. Terrible infection. You know, very top-notch businessman here in Toronto, someone I've known for, you know, the 6 and some years I've had the stint where I'm working. And I remember bringing up a lot of things, you know, treated the guy with holy oils and things like that when he's been sick before, and unfortunately I didn't know he was sick again, and he was in the hospital and passed away. But, you know, one of the little debates we had, you wouldn't really call it an argument or something, but just like a jousting, is, you know, he asked me, do I get the flu shot? No! Never! And he thought I was like from another planet. He got his flu shot. And you got to go and, you know, one day you're just talking to somebody and everything's okay, and, you know, the next day you're at the funeral home looking at them in a box. And then you got to come in and do the show and, you know, not let it drag you down or something like that. But we get the word out. We try to get you to listen, to understand, you know, there's a lot of evil out there. Not a whole lot of good. We got to make choices and decisions. This little video goes into choices and decisions you'll have to make. It might be related to 2012.
As you know, the Mayans disappeared. No one knew what happened to them. Also, there were several Indian tribes that disappeared. What it was that the Mayans were highly advanced civilization, and they were able to control this to the point that they shifted their entire civilization to this other dimension in mass. And they were advanced enough that they could see in the future to see that the next big event would be when the entire planet moved into the other dimension. See, this is why they had their calendar stop at 2012, because they could see this was the biggest event ever to happen in history. And they stopped their calendars at that time. So when I've got the person under, and they were at that time when they moved to the other dimension, and they're very happy there, I said, well, why did they come back into a human body? They said they were here to help the rest of us make the transition, to blaze the trail, to show the way. And we're all in the middle of this process right now. 2012 is building up to that. It's not the end, it is like the height. When we get to that point, you'll know something is definitely happening. It's happening now all over the world. People are getting it finally. But at that point, it's a separation with the old Earth and the new Earth. Everyone won't go because they can't change their vibration that quickly. If they're still in the negativity, they'll be left with the old Earth. They said they'll be left with what they created. They'll stay there. They'll work out their karma there. They won't move into the new Earth. This began about 2003, and we're in the middle of it right now. The new Earth is where all the violence will be. You have the volcanic eruptions, the earthquakes, all of the natural earth disasters are going to be on the old Earth. Now, they said those who are interested in this, those who understand what's happening, the ones into metaphysics, the ones who are thinking along this line, will definitely go to the new Earth. Everyone will not go. The ones who are still into negativity, who are stuck on the wheel of karma, who are very, they're doing all these awful things, like you're talking about the greedy and those, they will stay with the old earth. They will stay with what they created. But the new earth is happening now. The vibrations and frequencies are changing, and it's going to move into a totally new dimension. Now, when that happens, it's a separation of the two. This is what's very hard to understand. I've asked them many times, and I keep asking more questions, and they said, we don't have all the answers because this has never happened in the history of a universe before, that an entire planet will shift into another dimension. They said it's the greatest show on Earth. The ETs, everybody in space is watching this to see, can we pull it off? It's a big thing that's going to happen. And the new earth is going to be glorious. It's going to be wonderful. And that's where the majority of us are headed, as long as we understand what's going on. This is what's happening now, the awakening, the enlightenment of what is happening, because you can feel it in your bodies. And people out there who have these symptoms, they go to the doctors, and the doctors can't find anything wrong with them. All it is that in order to move with the planet, our bodies have to change frequencies and vibration also to match the planet. And when this happens, body can't change the frequency all at once. It would destroy the body. It has to be done gradually in stages. This began in 2003, and you may feel these symptoms for a few weeks or so, and then it'll level off for several months. Then it'll do it again as you progressively raise the vibrations. Some of the symptoms people are experiencing is heart palpitations, high blood pressure, dizziness, joint aches and pains, muscle aches and pains, depression. This is because the body is undergoing this and they don't understand what it is. 2012, people keep saying it's the end of civilization. No, it is not. It's the end of civilization as we know it. See, we're living in a very interesting time right now. We are moving into a new earth. The old earth is becoming too polluted, too corrupted, too environmentally unstable, and a new earth is being created. And what is happening, we are involved in it right now. It started in the year 2003. The vibrations and the frequencies of the old earth are changing in vibration, and we're moving into another dimension.
Okay, we're moving into another dimension. And to a great extent, perhaps the show is going to move into another dimension. We're not going to be giving up the ghost, but we will be changing some of the ways we operate in the future. It's hard to say. You are what we're here for, at least from my opinion. I don't do this for me. Don't need to hear the sound of my voice. I hear it all the time anyway. It's for you, our joint collective survival. That's part of the karma wave we try to influence by doing this show at that media. And there is a contact us button on their website with an email address. If you feel strongly about this show, contact us, which is them, and tell them about things like that. We do this for the power of blessing more than the power of finance, which is not a way to run a business, but it is a way to get to the fifth dimension. Blessings are very, very important. Sometimes you lose those blessings. The results are tragic. This Hurricane Sandy is a classic example where our fan and supporter sees the danger and bugs out and survives. And millions of other people lose everything. Something wrong with that picture. Should be the other way around, where millions of people got out and the only guy who didn't was, maybe passed out drunk in an alley somewhere. But I think God rewards us very, very well for the blessings that we give to people. That chance to see what's coming, to get out of the way, to protect your life, your wealth, your health, and everything else. I think that's priceless. So hopefully we can come to some sort of agreement, but like I say, I'm up to my neck in keeping it going as it's been, and was almost hard enough to survive with that. We've had a couple of generous donations come in the last little while to with some good budgeting, keep us going into the new year, but that's at the old rates, not the new rates. I can't play that game. So we'll see how it morphs out, but we'll still be here doing something for you, and we'll be back again next week, Thursday, and it may very well be the last show with this network, if there's no movement on the other side. Won't be as bad as the hockey strike, but it'll be a party. We'll talk about some of the things we've done, talk about 2012, maybe we'll even try to make sure we have the phone lines open so some of you can call in and express your opinions on what you think, because you're important to us. That's why we come here.
Still
Make sure you don't get burned. And then I get the power of the
I
blessing.
shot the sheriff
Come
and did not spare the deputy.
I'm going to slip on a banana peel, or the CIA is going to throw me out the window.
2 prayers and
Something
pray
just goes wrong.
until we're together. 1 promise I'm keeping tonight and forever. I'll never